Here's the situation. The Federal Reserve is in crisis mode. It's a disaster. It's like watching a train wreck. They put themselves in a spot where they have to either let the economy crash or let inflation spiral out of control. We'll see what they do on Wednesday, November 2nd. The Federal Reserve finishes up their meeting. The expectation is they're going to announce their plan to ease up on their fight against inflation starting in December. That's what the Federal Reserve has been hinting at since their last meeting. So that's pretty wild, considering that inflation is at 8.2%. On November 2nd, which is Wednesday, the Federal Reserve will do two things. One, increase interest rates again, and two, provide an update on their plan. So let me bring you up to speed. To everybody that's new here, welcome, and let me give you a quick summary. To everybody else, you know the drill, you know what's going on, so I'll make this a quick recap. The Federal Reserve let inflation get out of control. During the pandemic, they printed too much money and they kept interest rates too low for too long, at close to 0%. So that's not my opinion. The Federal Reserve admitted they made a mistake in November of 2021, but they never apologized, nor was anybody fired, but that's besides the point. Now, the Federal Reserve is trying to fix the situation and they're doing what they can to bring down inflation. The Federal Reserve is intentionally hurting the economy to lower inflation. So here's how it works. The Federal Reserve raises interest rates. This makes it more expensive to borrow money. Mortgages become more expensive, car loans become more expensive, business loans become more expensive, so you get it. The economy slows down. With a slowing economy, there's less demand for goods and services. This causes prices to stop going up so fast. So ultimately, you hurt the economy and then you slow down inflation. Now, this game plan by the Federal Reserve is a painful experience for the economy and for the American people. The question is, when is the Federal Reserve going to stop raising interest rates? Well, all I can tell you that it's not going to be on Wednesday. On November 2nd, it is expected that the Federal Reserve will raise interest rates again by 0.75%. Interest rates going up by another 0.75%, that's a lot. Before this year, they have not done a 0.75% rate increase since 1994. That's 28 years ago. And if they do the 0.75% increase again, that's going to be the fourth time in a row this year. The Federal Reserve interest rate is currently at 3.25%. On Wednesday, it's going to be at 4%. The Federal Reserve meets again in 6 weeks on December 14th. At that meeting, it is expected that the Federal Reserve will slow down. It is expected that they'll raise interest rates by 0.5%. That would bring the interest rate to 4.5%. The Federal Reserve Bank President of Atlanta, Raphael Bostic, said this was the baseline outlook for November and December. Now, let me tell you this. This Wednesday is going to be so important because it's going to give us a better sense of what they're going to do in December. However, if the October inflation report is worse than expected, then the Federal Reserve may not be able to go along with their plan. If the October inflation report comes out awful, then they're probably going to have to do 0.75% again in December. The economists and CEOs, they are warning that raising interest rates too fast and too high, it's going to hurt the economy more than is necessary. So they're issuing that warning. But on the other hand, slowing down prematurely would make it's going to make the high inflation situation last longer than it should. Let me tell you about the current data. CPI inflation has been coming down. It's no reason to celebrate or get excited because it's not been coming down at a very fast rate. So let me tell you about the inflation rates in June, July, August, and September, respectively. They were 9.1%, 8.5%, 8.3%, and then 8.2%. The Federal Reserve wants to get to 2%. That's their target rate. We're at 8.2% right now. That is unacceptably high and very far from 2%. Additionally, core inflation, when you strip out food and energy prices, is rising. It's at 6.6%. Obviously, food and energy are important, but the Federal Reserve says that they like to look at that stat. Well, again, looking at that measure, inflation is getting worse. So they don't they don't really have a good argument to slow down in December, not when it comes to the inflation reports. The Federal Reserve says they like to look at PCE inflation. That's another one of their measuring tools. That was still painfully elevated at 6.2%. So it doesn't matter if you're looking at CPI, CPI core inflation, PCE, they're all well above 2%. So I'm just saying, it's pretty clear the Federal Reserve is not in a good spot. Let's take a look at GDP, which is a measure of the health of our economy. In the first half of the year, GDP was negative. In the third quarter, July, August, and September, GDP grew at an annual rate of 2.6%. So according to the reports, the economy is apparently solid. Everything is great. This is a green light for the Federal Reserve to continue raising interest rates, not to slow down. So just think about it. Just think about it logically. If GDP was negative and getting worse, then there would be pressure on the Federal Reserve to stop damaging the economy. But the third quarter report says that the economy is doing well. It's doing great, positive GDP. So that's a call to stay aggressive. Let's take a look at the jobs report. The most recent data reported was for September. We're going to get the October report on Friday, November 4th. Going off the September jobs report, the economy added 263,000 jobs. The unemployment rate decreased to 3.5%. So there's two things I want to point out. The first one is that this means that the labor market is doing great. And two, this means that there is wage inflation adding to overall inflation. So this is a go, go, go signal for the Federal Reserve to stay aggressive. So I just want to point out that all these variables are encouraging the Federal Reserve to remain aggressive against inflation. Just take a look at the reports for yourself. We have high inflation that appears to be entrenched, a strong, growing economy, positive GDP, and a booming labor market, jobs added, and a falling unemployment rate. So that's the data, but let me give you the expectations. The Federal Reserve will start to slow down the interest rate increases starting in December. So they're going to raise interest rates 0.75% this Wednesday, 0.5% more in December, and then 0.25% more on February 1st. After February 1st, the plan is to stop raising interest rates and just leave the rates there for a few months to see how the economy does. They're going to take a wait and see approach. They like to say, data dependence. When they raise interest rates, it takes time for the economy to experience the slowdown. So the Fed wants to slow down, give it time, and review the data, review the situation. So that's the logic. Now, let me tell you what the Federal Reserve Bank presidents and members are saying they want to do and what they believe. So in no particular order, we're going to start with Kashkari. Kashkari said, and I quote, "Core services inflation, which is the stickiest of all, keeps climbing, and we keep getting surprised on the upside." Kashkari said, "The Federal Reserve cannot pause the interest rate increases at 4.5% if inflation is still accelerating." Moving on to Cook. Cook says that she revised her view on inflation. Cook said, "Inflation is more persistent than originally thought." She said the Federal Reserve should only slow the interest rate increases when inflation actually falls. George said she supports more interest rate increases, including the possibility that rates will need to go higher and maintain there for longer than previously thought. The Federal Reserve Bank President of Philadelphia, Patrick Harker, said, "The interest rate increases have done little to keep inflation in check. Therefore, more interest rate increases are necessary." Harker said, and I quote, "We're going to keep raising interest rates for a while." Harker also said that those higher interest rates are most likely going to remain there for an extended period of time. Harker said, and I quote, "Sometime next year, we're going to stop hiking rates. At that point, I think we should hold at a restrictive rate for a while to let monetary policy do its work. After that, if we have to, we can tighten further based on the data." However, others are already calling for a slowdown in the interest rate increases. The San Francisco Bank president wants to slow down starting now. Dali said, and I quote, "I think the time is now to start talking about stepping down. The time is now to start planning for stepping down." So let me know what you think. Let me know your opinion in the comments down below. I'll let you know what I think. I believe that the overall sentiment of the Federal Reserve is for them to remain aggressive on the interest rate increases, but to keep in mind, just keep that concept in the back of their head that overdoing it will cause unnecessary damage to the economy and hardship for the American people. Whether they care or not, that's a separate issue. But again, perhaps this conversation, it's too premature at inflation at 8.2%. And the economy doing as awesome as the government says it is. So stay tuned for the update and the decision from the Federal Reserve on Wednesday. We have the October jobs report being released on Friday, and then we get the October inflation reading next week, Thursday on November 10th. I hope this helps you stay current on what's going on. Please subscribe. I'll keep you updated on all the major developments. I'll save you the time. And again, we have some big, crucial days ahead of us. Thank you so much, and I wish you a very nice day. Please take care.